Welcome, Miss Monday, um, July 28th, 2025. It's the last Tuesday of July. You're watching John McEntyre Show live. I'm John McEntyre. We have a good show today. Um, but before we get into it, just hoping that everyone had a great weekend. You know, it was hot here in the South. We're in a serious heat wave. We're in a record-breaking heat wave, and it's almost unbearable here. I know I said that last week, and that's what I was talking about last week. Is that an even hotter, you know, heat wave on its way? And so, yeah, we're like suffering through this. I don't do very well in a lot of hot weather, so I put it in the budget that our um, power usage is going to be much higher because of the air conditioning, and I'm okay with that. But like I said, we have a good show. I'm going to be talking about um, a, describing a couple that I worked with that had sold their home, and then they actually had some proceeds left over, and they wanted to know what to do. Um, but before I talk about that, don't forget to share those questions. We are live. Send in your questions. Put an uppercase Q or capital Q, whichever one you choose. I see it. I will make sure and do my best to answer your question. Um, Share those wallet wins. I'm hearing those wallet wins, and we're definitely celebrating people there opening those high yield savings accounts, those college savings funds, setting those up. They're doing their 401ks, making sure that uh, there's a lot of policy reviews and investment portfolio reviews, not in views, reviews, IRAs, new IRAs being set up all the way across the board, and that's good. Wills are being done, everything. Wills are being updated, most importantly, so that's also a good thing. Now, before I also get started, if you have one situations, you don't know where you are with your finances, or you just want to get started on a new path, or restart it, something may have happened, going through a financial situation, and you want to know where you are, contact us here. My favorite financial professional can work with you, and that's Andrea, my wife. She can definitely look at all areas of your finance and definitely put you on a path and get you on target financially. Our contact information is on the screen there. Just give us a call. Visit the website, johnmcintyre.com. Go to contact us, schedule an appointment, get on her calendar, and we can definitely get you on that path. All right. So, like I said, the actual the couple that I was working with, like I said, to set up the situation. The question why they contacted me. Uh, the house. Well, they were downsizing. They sold their house, and they had the proceeds, paid off the house, the mortgage, and then they downsized and they bought a smaller home, and they actually were able to pay cash for it because they're getting older, and they're thinking about retirement and everything like that. And so uh, they decided that we sell this house, we have enough, we would definitely just pay it, just pay cash for a house, let that be the end of that, where our home will be taken care of, and which was very smart. Um, and they had $60,000 left over. And so as I looked at their finances, um, I did the usual, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I call it the SWOT. SWOT is a way of analyzing situations. Um, their biggest weakness was they didn't have any savings. They had no savings. They both were working. They had benefits. Both had benefits. Good jobs. Um, they both had 401ks that were being matched dollar for dollar. Very smart. Never leave money on the table. One of my mottos. Uh, the thing is, they had some credit card debt. They had some. They were making their monthly payment. Um, the minimum monthly payment on it. Uh, but they had no kids, and they didn't have any plans of making any major purchases in the near future. And so they were just wanting to know, what would be the best way to handle the 60,000 that they had left over. They were not arguing. They just wanted an opinion. They wanted someone involved with an objective opinion, and they just needed some coaching in this particular area. And so um, the husband, he wanted to pay off the debt, which is usual. A lot of times, it is usually the husband that wants to pay off the debt when they have large chunks of money like that. But the wife, just as prudent and practical, she wanted to put it in savings, and that's just as smart. So we had two. It wasn't a dilemma. It was basically how to handle it. Do we set up savings first? Do we pay off debt first? Which one? And since both were working, both stable jobs, have been at their jobs for a long amount of time, I suggested that they would just compromise right off the gate, and they were willing to compromise. They were not, like I said, stressed. They were not arguing or anything like that. And I said, since you both were working, let's compromise by starting for putting 3 to 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund. After we looked at their finance, calculated everything, I recommended the 3 to 6 months, because even though they've been at their jobs for quite a long time, and they are in stable careers, anything could happen. Anything could happen. Most of the time, I would have just said, just starting out, put $1,000 in an emergency fund. That has seemed to work well. But in that particular situation, since they had this would definitely accelerate everything that they were trying to get set up. And so I suggested do the 3 to 6 months, make the decision if you wanted to do 3, 4, 5, 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund, because that was the weakness. They had no savings. They didn't have any savings. And I told them, I said, you don't really, since you're not planning to make any major purchases, the 3 to 6 months would be just fine. And if something did happen, you would be able to use that if an emergency arose. And that took care of that. That helped the wife. And the husband, he was very, he was willing to do that. He was like, yes, I can work with that. Because it wasn't like he didn't think that his wife wasn't being smart. She wasn't thinking that he was being smart. He was looking for the best way to do this. That's all. And so once we decided, the 3 to 6 months, and they said they would talk a little bit more and come up with a plan. Should they do 3 to 6 months, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to do that? Then they would look at the next step, which was the actual debt reduction. Now it's to take the money for the debt reduction, because I was like, yes, you guys are making the minimum payment, but it's very unnecessary, and you are accruing interest. So we do want to pay off the credit cards, but this way, with this chunk of money, you can apply it. So the strategy was, okay, now how are we going to apply this chunk of money to this debt payoff, to the debt reduction or payoff? Well, we looked at everything, and they had just enough. Well, before I say that, the husband, debt wise, I've talked about the different ways of paying off debt, the different methods. We have the debt snowball, which you pay off the lowest. Put all your debts, put them down on paper or a spreadsheet, or in an app, or whatever you use. One with the lowest balance, pay that off first. Take that balance that you paid off and apply it to the next largest, and then just keep doing it that way, making the payment. Making the minimum payment on your other debts as you pay off these with these large chunks of money, and it snowballs and everything. Other one, the debt, that wife, she liked the debt snowball. Husband, he liked the debt avalanche, which is pay off the one with the highest interest rate, because he didn't need, the debt snowball. You see those quick wins, and that's kind of like what his wife wanted to see. The wife, she wanted to see the quick wins. The husband, he likes knowing that he's not paying more for this debt than he should be in interest rates. So they both, they liked, one like debt snowball, other like debt avalanche, and both of them, they're beneficial in their own way. I just wanted them to get this paid off because they just didn't need to be carrying credit card debt anyway, because credit cards, that's usually the highest interest rates out there on any type of debt. It's usually on the credit cards. In that particular situation, their rates wasn't bad because they had good credit. They believed in having good credit. They believed in paying their bills. The credit cards that they were using them for specific purposes. Each one had a specific purpose, and that was smart. And they were not, they were not abusing them or overly using them, or depending on them or anything like that. They were just carrying a balance, and they said they was just something they had always done. They just never really thought about it. They just never thought about just paying it off. And then when they became more conscious of it, uh, they just didn't have the money to pay it off. They could make the minimum payments, and they really didn't care too much for that. And that's where they was really kicking themselves, those areas of not having savings and not paying and carrying credit card balance. So before we even got into talking about how we were going to pay it off, I recommended that they negotiate. Call the credit card companies. You've been making your payments on time. You haven't abused them. You haven't exceeded your ratios, because most credit cards, they don't want to see you using over 30% of the balance. And they were far from using that much. They had high balances on the credit cards anyway, and they just were not just using, a lot of the money. So I was like, you're a prime candidate to call in and renegotiate before you start doing any payment type stuff. Let's renegotiate the rates and see what happens then, and then make the decision what you're going to do, because you don't have enough money from the proceeds to pay them all off. So let's negotiate the interest rates down to terms and everything, and then start the process. And so that's what they decided to do, that they would negotiate the lowest interest rates. And I said, then use a chunk, start with the debt snowball for that quick win to help the wife, to help her. And the husband, he was like, yes, we can do that. And I said, once you renegotiate those, the lowest balance, pay it off, because even though the renegotiation may not be necessary for all of the cards, it's just a good thing to do, is just to be able to negotiate. That was the main reason. I said, because once you get older and you start having to really watch your income and watch your expenses, it will be good to have strong negotiation skills. And so that's why I was like, negotiate. This will be good practice for you to learn to negotiate. And they really like that suggestion also. And so I said, no, now negotiate the lowest rate, pay off that lowest balance with the snowball, and then you can use the avalanche for the other two if you choose to. You can use the avalanche, snowball, whatever. And that should take care of them both. And they were happy. They were definitely happy with it. Now knowing that they have the savings, the wife, she's content knowing they have 3 to 6 months of savings for anything that may happen. Pray that plan for pray for the best, plan for the worst. So that's covered. The actual, some of the debts being paid off. The husband, he's happy. So everyone's happy. So it was a good meeting, and quick, good strategy. And they're going to update me to let me know how everything is working. And they really like the concept of the wallet win. So they was like, probably they will let us know about the sharing the wallet win, of renegotiating the credit card interest rates, because the husband, he was excited about that. The wife, she was not too excited, but she knew it was a skill that would definitely benefit them once they're, in the older age, just because you'll be getting close to retirement soon. So it's just a good thing to have, to be able to negotiate. So that's we ended with that 60,000 left over. And it was I was like, that was very prudent to sell the house, downsize. That was very smart. A lot of people, they can't they just the emotionally they cannot let the house go. It's where the kids were. It's a lot of good things happen. I said, but if it's going to benefit you financially, and you may need the money, um, that's how a lot of people that have built considerable wealth, they use their home as one of their wealth building tools. Um, it may not be a short term great investment, as far as a true financial asset, but later on they sell it, have a you know, nice big chunk of money to add to their retirement and everything, to their savings and all of this. That's a smart move. And so that's where we are. That's where I'm going to end it. And everyone should be living happily ever after, knowing that they've made some smart financial moves here. So that's where I'm going to end it. Um, there's no questions. There are no wallet wins, no sharing. Don't forget to share those wallet wins. Hashtag wallet win. I'll make sure and share them on the next live. If you have any questions, send the questions in. And um, it may be time for you, like I said earlier, to have someone to look at your overall financial situation to know if you are on target with your finances. And contact us, get on Andrea's calendar so that she could definitely let you know if you're on target and what you need to do to get on target and to get that financial future um, the way you would want it to be. So, that being said, I want to thank you for tuning in today. I will see you next week, same time, same channel. Have a good one.